Hello and welcome to the Arise interview, where we take time to reflect on the big stories from the news and on the fortunes and affairs of the world in an hour of conversation with commentators, analysts and thought leaders. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, once again, Nigeria's trade unions are threatening to strike and to shut down the country over an increase in the price of petrol. They've given the government of President Buhari a 7-day ultimatum to either meet their demands or face an indefinite period of industrial action and nationwide protests. Amid concern about the impact of the coronavirus on the economy, we'll hear from both sides in a moment. And later, as US President Donald Trump issues a disaster declaration for Oregon, one of the states worst hit by wildfires raging in Western America, fires which have charred more than 20,000 square kilometers of land in California, Oregon, and Washington, we take a sobering look at some of the links that are being made to climate change and its impact on people in America, as well as Africa and the rest of the world. Coming up. We begin here in Nigeria, where one of the country's main labor unions, the Trade Union Congress, has threatened to shut down the country over fuel price hikes. The TUC has written a letter to President Buhari warning that the government must meet its demand to reverse an increase in petrol prices within 7 days or witness an indefinite industrial action and national protests. The country's trade unions have also said they're concerned wages have not kept up with rising prices. The unions have argued that given the other economic difficulties ordinary Nigerians are facing, the last thing they had expected was another policy measure that would make life more miserable. But talks with the government have so far ended in deadlock.
We have said time without number that those issues that constitute the price is part of the inefficiency in our system, which government hitherto have been paying and christening as subsidy. And what we are merely doing now is to transfer those payments of inefficiency to consumers, which consumers now will pay, but we have not addressed the issue. So fundamentally, what is required is for us to address this issue, and I agree with you. The president said, no, subsidy is a fraud. I agree that is a fraud. And if it's a fraud, do we address it or do we transfer it to the customers? That is where the issue is. We don't need to transfer it to the customers. We have increased VAT. We have increased some taxes. We have increased now the fuel price. And we have now increased the tariff on electricity. An ordinary worker that earns 30,000, you are sure that with the tariff now, he can't pay less than 10,000. In fact, even higher level officers were complaining seriously. This is the predicament we're in. And therefore, let's also look for solution. How do we mitigate this impact, which is very pronounced on workers, which is the main issue?
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the Secretary General of one of Nigeria's main labor unions, the Trade Union Congress, Comrade Barrister Musa Lawal. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much.
What's the basis for that ultimatum that you've issued to President Buhari and his government?
Thank you very much. First, COVID came. It is nobody's fault. Then we're all enduring it. Government promised palliatives. We never saw palliative anywhere. All our workers in Nigeria never attested to 1% of the palliative to them. Then we said, okay, we can still carry on. It's a problem that is general in nature. As we are just trying to get out of COVID a little, government slams the populace with petroleum.
Yeah, do you mind facing me a little bit? So that,
okay.
Yeah, just
government slams the populace, especially the workers,
right,
with petroleum increase, tariff increase, customs increase, everything increase. We lost our jobs during the COVID-19. Most workers lost their jobs. Their families that they were supporting are now very helpless. Now they have left job, no money coming in. Then the social services that we used to enjoy at a particular level that everybody is now used to, is now increased. What do you want us to do? That was why TUC metaphorically said that the government is killing the dead. Because we are dead already. Then you are still killing us. Then it is too much. That was one. Against all this one, we had a show of shame at the National Assembly where so much money had been consumed wrongly. So it means we have money. They can't pay minimum wage. We are increasing the services, the common service that the common man has access to in Nigeria. We are also increasing it. What do you want us to do? We had no choice but to write a letter to government that we have been talking, we have been writing. Of course, we have been engaging them over time. But at this level, with this increase in tariff for electricity and petroleum subsidy, it means one thing, that government does not have empathy for the people. By the time we are all dead, what will they be governing? I said, no. Before you die, you have a right to protect your life. And that is the reason why we have written a letter to the government. Please reverse this, reverse that. By the time you are through with these reversals, we can sit and talk. Then we can think together as stakeholders, then move forward. But if they fail to do that, then of course we are prepared to follow them to make sure that nobody goes to work as from 23rd.
Right, but that's the Trade Union Congress.
Exactly.
That's not the other main unions.
No, the other main union went for their own meeting today. You see, the system in trade unions is that we have organs. You pass through organs to get to the level where you are. We as TUC have done that, and then we have issued our trade. NLC, of course, our counterparts, have also been having their meeting. I'm sure by now they should have been over with the meeting. Of course, tomorrow you hear what I have said. But one thing is clear and is common to all of us, that we protect the workers, and we cannot allow workers to suffer in the hands of government.
Right, and you find the raising of fuel prices unacceptable, basically.
We find it unacceptable for one reason. We do not know why it is coming at this time.
Right.
At the time, people are incapable of feeding themselves.
Right, okay, you made that point earlier. You and I know that ultimatums usually don't work. It amounts to a threat, and most governments, and in fact most people, react badly to threats.
Well, we didn't just wake up to issue ultimatum. We have been engaging government over time. Even this during COVID-19, we sent proposals to government to implement. So it is when you are pushed to the wall, they said, no, before I die, let me react.
And has there been any reaction from the government or the presidency or the Ministry of Labour to your ultimatum?
Well, we had a meeting yesterday with the government where the Minister of Labour casually mentioned that they have received our letter to the president, and even chided by saying that we should have sent the letter to him. Obviously, government is in the know of the letter. And we still have a little time from now till Wednesday next week for them to react. We are waiting.
Right.
But we are also stated very clearly that we are not interested in going on strike. But we are also not interested in our members dying unreasonably.
Well, isn't this a rather warped strategy, though, the idea of going on strike? Because if you embark on a nationwide strike, you are going to have lower income people badly hit. It'll affect the economy badly. Lots of businesses will lose money, and it'll amount to further impoverishment of the very people you are expressing concern for. Is that a price worth paying?
Yeah, it is a pain we have to bear. Most times, it's impossible to move forward without losing one or two things. But it is in the hand of government to do something between now and Wednesday.
Yeah, but if the government says they will not do something, because really the government, their justification is that they've deregulated the oil industry, that because it eliminates crippling fuel shortages, that there used to be, and because fuel prices are now subject to the vagaries of the commercial market, they will take some time to find their price level and then will hopefully stabilize. I mean, that's a principle of market economies.
Yes. In any market economy, there are also stakeholders. When your action is going to affect anybody adversely, it's only right that you call that person to the table. This is what we want to do. What are our opinions? Because this is where we are. We didn't have that. And for workers that have been working whose minimum wage was signed last year that has not been paid.
Right.
You are slamming them on a new tariff. You are always saying you don't value the workers. And the workers say they value themselves. They have to protect their rights. We are not interested in going to a strike. It doesn't pay anybody. But it creates so many problems, even for us. It costs us a lot of money as well. But when you don't have a choice, you are pushed to the wall. What do? You watch helplessly and die? I tell you, it's not a joke. Literally, people have been dying in this economy. Many people lost their jobs. The aviation industry, the hotel industry. And they have families. And most people, when they earn just one salary, they take care of not less than 10 people. So those ones that are secondary consumers of the salary, they are dead already. Then what should we do? Those who are still working, shouldn't we protect the others? Shouldn't we protect the nation? For goodness sake, this country belongs to all of us, not just the government people.
And looking again at the reasons why you're taking the action that you're taking, is there a sense that this government is not basically concerned about what happens to ordinary workers? Because that seems to be what you're suggesting.
No, from the point of view of workers, if you know that in the last 5 to 6 months, things have been very hectic for everybody. You, the government, promised palliatives. I didn't know who got the palliatives. Workers never got. Those who lost their jobs were at home. They never got this palliative. Who got the palliatives? And the palliatives, the amount being quoted for palliative is so high. We don't know where it went. It takes us to another level. We are so corrupt that every opportunity we have in this country, we roll corruption all over it. And then in the end, we don't see anything. For once, we should call government to order. Let them know that the people of this country also know their rights.
So what is your expectation of the government? I mean, what if the government says, look, we've deregulated oil prices, there's nothing we can do? I mean, this is subject to the vagaries of the market.
So, Nigeria is now for sale. That's market that determines what happens to people. What about social issues? What about social contract? What about the right of government to protect all these citizens under any circumstance? Where has that right gone? Those rights are what we are claiming. If the government means well for this country, they should reverse those things so that at least at that time we can come to the table, discuss. You cannot be pushing the horse anyhow. We are all human beings. And the government people, they also have some people that are poor. So they don't care. Once they get to that level of being politicians, earning all money, nobody has ever talked about how much each politician earns, either in the Senate or in the House of Assembly. And they say they are for people. Even this deregulation, does it even affect them? It doesn't.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point that you're making, and that's why going on a strike is going to be like shooting yourself in the foot. Because basically what happens is that the people that you're protesting against, the price, I mean, it doesn't affect them. It's going to affect your workers, it's going to affect people in lower income levels, and that's what is essentially, I mean, you're doing the same thing that you're accusing the government of doing. But let me ask you to just hold on.
Okay.
We're going to come back to you in a minute because we must take a break. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat about the ultimatum issued to the Nigerian government by the Trade Union Congress. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu. So once again, the Nigerian government and the country's powerful trade unions are ranged against each other over fuel price rises, with the unions talking angrily and warning of trouble ahead. Trade Union Congress has accused the government of insensitivity in allowing the price rise at a time when people are bearing what they called the heavy burden of the coronavirus pandemic. The TUC is warning of a much bigger, much more concerted strike action across the country in protest. We'll continue our chat with the Secretary General of the TUC in a moment. But first, here's the economist Bismarck Rewani, who is also a member of the Nigerian government's Economic Advisory Council, speaking just over a week ago on Arise News about the reason for the rise in the price of fuel.
The timing, I mean, you could sequence it one way or the other, but the point is that you cannot predict or forecast the level of volatility. And once you have deregulated the price, then all you have to do is to ensure that there's no price gouging, that people are not being taken to the cleaners by unscrupulous marketers. But having said that, because there's a cumulative trust deficit, people do not trust the government, or not this government only, but all governments in Nigeria historically. So the Nigerian government has burnt its goodwill across for the past 30, 40, 50 years. So it's difficult for now this government or future governments to come and say, yes, trust us. The only way they can be trusted is by, doing the right things and doing them in such a transparent manner. But again, you see, the whole idea is that this deregulation takes away the subsidies. The subsidies were not even in the budget of 2020 and 2021. So it takes away the subsidies. The question of the cost reflective tariffs does not affect the man at the bottom of the pyramid. It affects only the elites and the affluent. And all of this means that the government will have more revenue and also more expenses. It reminds me of the song by Notorious B.I.G., played out by PDD, which calls More Money, More Problems. So that's what's happening now. Nigeria is having the typical B.I.G. thing, that more money, more problems. So we have more revenue, but we have more problems. And the problems are not only today's problems, which are tactical, but also cumulative over the past.
Bismarck Rewani there, and the Secretary General of one of Nigeria's main labor unions, the Trade Union Congress, Comrade Barrister Musa Lawal, is still with me in the studio. Thank you very much for staying with us. What's your reaction to what you heard Mr. Rewani saying?
Well, I just listened to him. That argument has been the argument over the years for every government. We are tired of it. What is the problem now? We are not even against the regulation. We have also supported regulation in the past. But what are you bringing? We have said it several times. Put the refineries in order. At least we are petroleum producers. Let us enjoy the benefit. If we refine, our oil here, it means that even more people will have work and will have it direct. Why do you now go and import freight amount for transportation, insurance? All this become part of what we are paying for having oil. For God's sake, we have stayed too little. For a long time, Buhari's government has enjoyed favor from labor. We have not disturbed it because we also believe so much had gone wrong in the past. What correction? But the more we see, the less you understand. Corruption became even larger than it was. Then, and it got to a point that, okay, the man at the helm of it is not corrupt. What about the people around him? If they are corrupt, what's the difference? For goodness sake, workers have stayed dormant for too long. This time around, sir, it's clear that the government does not mean well for this thing. If they mean well, we signed minimum wage since last year. Why are the government not paying it today? But very easy to slam, to remove subsidy and increase prices. But what the government, the workers are supposed to earn since last year has not been paid. And you know what, sir? Even the minimum wage, though it has not come, has been overrun by prices over in the streets. When they heard that the money was coming, everybody increased their prices in the market. And that is what has happened. We haven't gotten the money, then we are suffering.
Right. Well, let me just point out to our viewers that we did make efforts to bring in a member of the government to come in and speak on behalf of the government, and we were told this morning that they were going into a Federal Executive Council meeting and they couldn't guarantee whether they would make it and be here on time. But just continuing our chat, Secretary General, the honest truth is that you have not actually taken much action during President Buhari's time. I mean, I don't actually recall any strikes or anything from, and there have been several increases of petrol and several other things that you've accused the government of doing wrong. Why now?
Yes. Like I told you, at the point Buhari took over, all Nigerians knew and believed so much had gone wrong. And relying on his presidents of the first rulership, we were all very hopeful that yes, this is the time to put the things wrong. 1 month, 3 months, 1 year, 2 years, it is as if we are even going back further than we were. Then we began to ask ourselves, we have been saying, okay, leave him, maybe he has to do it this way, he has to do it. But it came to a point that we are beginning to think that what is happening? Are we sleeping? Why it is even taking place at this material time is this. At a time, the governments of the world, various places, were helping their citizens to recover from COVID-19. The only thing our government can do is to slam new increases. Where do we get the money from? You increase minimum wage, you don't pay us. You sack our workers because of COVID-19. The government could not control private employers because they all sack their people. Then you increase the social services. What are we to do? Commit suicide? I repeat, we're dead, but it's killing us again. The dead can also react.
No, you made that point. And, I mean, we've seen the most recent economic numbers that have come out in Nigeria, and it showed a pretty severe contraction in the economy. I mean, do those things concern you, that what you're going to do now is going to make things even worse? The government simply cannot, I mean, it's one thing to hold them to account, which you're perfectly right to do, but the problems of Nigeria, and that's the government's argument, are cumulative. They have accumulated over so many years. The issue of the fact that, you know, the refineries are not working, and there's so many other problems, structural problems within the Nigerian economy. They can't wave a magic wand and fix everything. And to make matters worse, the coronavirus has come in, they've lost taxes, they've lost so much money on this, and, you know, market forces say, you know, prices of petrol have to go up.
If I may ask in a very simple language, sir, what is the basic function of government? What is the basic function?
Well, you answer the question.
To protect these people. We are crying that coronavirus has come. We don't have money. We can't eat. Government is not giving us money, taking the little we have and sack us and ask us to come back to pay more. We are ready to die.
Right. Okay, so what happens next?
We are continuing our strike on Wednesday. If government does not reverse those prices, I assure you, we are going on strike.
Would you say, given all that you know about what's happened with the coronavirus, the several increases of petrol, I think there have been 3 or 4 over as many months, and all the other problems in this country, would you say that as the end of the year approaches, Christmas approaches, that this overall has been an unhappy year for Nigerians?
Coronavirus year, like somebody jokingly said, he will not add that year to his number of years because it has given nothing and given nothing. But I'll tell you, in Nigeria, it has helped us a lot. We all noticed that for once in Nigeria, we were almost in a position to feed ourselves without importing any food from anywhere because the borders were all closed. Imagine if there had been no food and the borders were closed everywhere. It should have been worse. But Nigeria can survive under coronavirus to this level. Also means that if we harness our resources properly, we can all survive as a nation. Now, let me ask this question. Government borrow money a lot. What for? We are not against loan. If the people of the country that the government is saying that is protecting is now in trouble of coronavirus, we are not borrowing money to ensure that they survive, but can borrow money to do other things. What for? For who? When we are all dead, who will use the railway line if we are dead? If you build a new road, who will use it? It's not people.
We're going to have to end it there. Comrade Barrister Musa Lawal, Secretary General of Nigeria's main labor union, the Trade Union Congress, thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you, sir.
You're watching the Arise interview, plenty more still ahead, including we'll take a sobering look at the relationship between the fires in America and climate change there and around the world. Stay with us.